The past 1 week in Indian politics has been very instructive. One by one, the masks have come off, and the real frightening faces of the men and women who support the hijab are now being exposed. There are dozens and dozens of such individuals, organizations, and foreign governments who have jumped into the debate to rally against the Indian government. These include the usual suspects of the likes of Owaisi, the entire top Congress High Command, lawyers like Kapil Sibal, and that very predictable yellow pamphleteer and one-time wonder novelist Arundhati Roy, who, in a recent interview with Karan Thapar, advocated the balkanization of the country, even questioned whether India was one. And of course, Mr. Thapar smiled and egged her on and even asked, "How soon do you think the country will break up?" And internationally, support for the hijab came in from Miss Malala, who, in Pakistan, had lashed out wearing against the hijab and the burqa, which she said felt like the steamy inside of a shuttlecock to her. And for the Indian Muslims, how dare the Indian government not allow them to wear the hijab? Another notable pro-hijab interventions came from Rashad Hussain, ambassador at large for the US International Religious Freedom, the Pakistan government, Human Rights Watch, Indian feminists and liberals who personally flaunt a bohemian lifestyle but want Muslim girls draped in the hijab. In short, we know about all these entities and their inclinations, so no surprises there. The real issue is, what is the intent of all these pro-hijab entities? What are they really driving at? What is the end game? That is the question. I will argue in this episode that the real aim is to defeat the will of the people. The real intent is to scuttle electoral democracy and bring through the back door a perverted radical minorityism that will change the landscape of the country, paralyze the workings of the government, and create a semi permanent state of perpetual anarchy. Hi, and welcome all to the CAA show. CAA is, of course, Conversations and Analysis, and my name is Juggi Bhasin. The CAA show is the thinking man and woman's show. We generate ideas and debate of all the hot button issues of the day. If you want to be part of this journey, join us by pressing the red subscriber button on the right hand side of your laptop screen. Subscription is, of course, completely free. So let us talk of intent out here. Parliamentary democracies function based on the will of the people, and the will of people is conveyed by how people vote for candidates and political parties in the elections. Again, in a very simple manner, the party with most of the votes is chosen to form the government, and elected representatives or lawmakers of the winning side then make laws in parliament. The model can somewhat change from one democracy to the next, but by and large, that is the prescriptive model. Now, vis-a-vis the hijab issue, the ruling party, which also has its government in Karnataka, has mandated the schools have the right whether to allow the hijab or not on their premises. Notice that the Karnataka government has said nowhere that it disallows the wearing of the hijab in public places or in the private space. But a case is being made out that the rights of Muslim women to wear the hijab in Karnataka have been violated by the state government. That is certainly not the case. What really is going on is that vested interests, some of which I have mentioned before, and many other agent provocators, realize that the will of people expressed through the incumbent government in Karnataka is dead set against rule violation in schools and the uniform code. Most of the people don't like this my hijab, my right kind of radicalism to come into schools. In purely electoral democracy terms, such radicalism finds no support amongst most people. So then, how best to subvert the will of the people and bring in not only the hijab but other kinds of radicalism through the back door? To do that, many of these elements have started questioning whether electoral democracy is the only true barometer to gauge the will of the people. They argue that a healthy democracy should also have other legs to stand upon, notably minority rights, a curtailment of the majority view, and an audit of human rights, social, and communal violation to create a kind of a scorecard which allows governments to stay in power or not. In short, what these people are saying is that the exercise of the vote is only one prerequisite of parliamentary democracy. A healthy human rights and minority rights scorecard and amplification of their aspiration is the other prerequisite. If governments are found deficient in this parameter, then they should be delegitimized both within their country and internationally. It also means, in short, that people like them, that is, a bunch of failed political aspirants and individuals and academics in foreign universities and worldwide think tanks and human rights watch groups, these people will prepare a scorecard or index or a report card about which government should continue or which should be delegitimized. The audacious, dangerous thinking connects the PFI, the Campus Front of India, Malala Yousafzai, Arundhati Roy, the worst kind of barbarians and mullahs in Pakistan, and the Indian academic and journalist working in Western countries who is inimically opposed to the present government. You can call this new perverted thinking as a kind of a toolkit or a plan or a strategy to bring pressure on legally elected democratic governments, categorize them as fascist and anti-minority, paint them in a corner internationally, isolate them, get other governments to impose sanctions on them, and eventually bring them down. The scale and breadth and the audacity of this new thinking boggles the mind. Finally, in short, the plan is number one, question such governments. Number two, use individuals or a cause to discredit them. Number three, to actively disrupt them through protest and blockades and create anarchy. Number four, to isolate them internationally. Number five, to then trap them in prolonged litigation. And number six, to force them into making concessions or even bring them down. And finally, the end game. What do all these agent provocators hope to practically get out of the collapse of legally elected democratic governments? The mullah or the religious fanatic hopes to create a radical cadre and take a state or even a region into an extremist zone such as like another Syria or an Afghanistan, a kind of a place where the writ of these religious fanatics runs supreme over both men and women. The academic and the journalist and the intellectual hopes to gravitate towards a position of power in the new dispensation, gain contracts and proximity to the leaders they prop up, and end their years of isolation from the power center. Different strokes for different people, but united in their lust to be at the center of things and call the shots. So, on this note, I come to this end of this episode of the CAA show, and I hope you really enjoyed this episode. And if you like the CAA show, as I keep saying, please do subscribe to us. And on this note, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.